There is a moment just before sunrise in northern Michigan when everything holds still. The mist sits low across the pine barrens. The air carries the faint sweetness of blossoms, and the only sound cutting through the silence is a sharp, insistent song rising from somewhere deep inside a young jack pine. That song belongs to one of the rarest birds on the continent. And this landscape, this precise intersection of forest, orchard, and freshwater shoreline, is the only place on Earth where everything it needs exists in one place. The Kirtland's warbler is not a bird that compromises. With its lemon-yellow breast, bluish-gray back, and relentless territorial call, it has spent thousands of years becoming perfectly adapted to a single habitat type: young jack pine forests, specifically those with trees between 5 and 20 years old. The dense, low-hanging branches of these adolescent pines create the ground-level cover the warbler demands for nesting. Once the trees grow too tall, the birds abandon them entirely and search for newly regenerated stands. This level of ecological specificity pushed the species to the edge of extinction by the 1970s, when fire suppression across Michigan's northern lower peninsula allowed jack pine forests to age beyond the warbler's usable range. At its lowest point, fewer than 200 singing males were recorded. Conservation efforts, including controlled burns and managed timber harvesting to reset forest age, slowly reversed that trajectory. Today, the population has climbed back into the thousands, and the Kirtland's warbler was officially removed from the endangered species list in 2019. But its survival remains tied entirely to the continued management of this very specific forest ecosystem. Just beyond the pine barrens, the terrain shifts. The forest thins, the soil changes, and suddenly the landscape opens into something almost dreamlike. Row after row of tart cherry trees in full peak bloom. Every spring, across the counties of Leelanau, Benzie, Grand Traverse, and Antrim, these orchards erupt into a sea of white blossoms so dense they appear to fog the hillsides. Michigan is not simply a producer of tart cherries, it is the producer. The state accounts for roughly 75% of the entire United States supply, a dominance built on the moderating influence of Lake Michigan, which buffers the orchards from late frosts and creates the precise growing conditions the fruit requires. The cherry industry is not just an agricultural fact. It is a cultural identity woven into the economy and heritage of the region. Between the pine forest and the cherry orchard exists a third actor, one small enough to overlook but critical enough that without it, the entire system collapses. Honeybees and native pollinators move through the blossoms during the brief 2-week window when the cherry trees flower. Each visit transfers pollen, and each transfer is a future fruit. Commercial beekeepers bring hives into the region specifically for this pollination window, but the surrounding natural landscape plays a supporting role that is easy to underestimate. The pine barrens and adjacent wildflower meadows provide forage before and after the cherry bloom, sustaining bee populations through the shoulder seasons when orchard flowers are absent. A landscape stripped of its natural buffer zones would leave pollinators without resources during critical periods, weakening the colonies that the orchards depend on entirely. What makes northern Michigan remarkable is not any single element in isolation. It is the way these systems lean against each other. The managed jack pine forests that protect the Kirtland's warbler also maintain open, fire-adapted landscapes that support native plant diversity. The warblers themselves help regulate insect populations within the pine barrens, reducing pressure from species that could otherwise spread into adjacent agricultural land. The cherry orchards, in turn, provide a concentrated nectar source that amplifies the carrying capacity for pollinators across the entire region. Lake Michigan anchors it all, moderating temperatures, feeding the water table, and defining the geography that makes this particular combination of species and land use possible in one place and nowhere else. This is not a coincidence of nature sitting beside agriculture. It is a functioning relationship, one that took millennia to assemble and requires active, informed stewardship to maintain. Every controlled burn in the pine barrens, every managed hive moved into an orchard row, every protected shoreline buffer is a decision that either sustains or erodes something irreplaceable. The warbler's song at dawn is not just beautiful. It is a signal that the balance, for now, is holding.